Hello, I'm Charles Randolph, and welcome to the channel. Tonight, we are opening up an important conversation about race with my guest, Shaian. I first met Shaian at a poetry event where she was the first to stand up to the mic and the first to share support for us. Her confidence and the challenge she posed to start a good trend left a lasting impression on me. Shaian was born and raised in Alabama and later moved to Portland, Oregon. She is a poet and now hosts an event, The Moment of Truth, that creates space for voices to be heard and shared. If you are interested in participating, you'll find the sign-up link in the description below, along with her Instagram. Be sure to check it out and show her your support. Before we dive into our conversation, I want to share some context for why this topic matters to me. Discussions about race in the media often only surface when a major event occurs. Too often, these moments are reduced to 3 minutes of polarizing sound bites, short clips designed to stoke conflict and drive clicks rather than foster real understanding. In contrast, this conversation seeks to go deeper. I also wanted to explore what experiences Shaian and I might share, even coming from very different backgrounds. For example, as someone living with epilepsy, I've often had to mask aspects of my identity to navigate the social norms of the able. While race and illness are not the same, I believe there's a shared mechanism here: how society's expectation shapes our personal experiences. This is not about equating one to the other, but about finding points of connection through our stories. This is a 4-part interview. In part 1, we discuss early experiences and identity. 2, societal expectations. 3, systemic racism and generational impacts. And 4, hope for change. Please see a description for a more detailed outline and links. So, let's raise the curtain and begin a thoughtful and open discussion about race, identity, and the commonalities that unite us all. Enjoy the show. So, Shaian.
Yes.
Regarding race.
Such
Isn't it?
such a lovely topic.
I think it's good. I think it's good that we're having this open conversation about it.
Absolutely.
Specifically on your personal experience.
Okay.
So, how about we start with your childhood and your early experiences? Do you have a first memory that you can recall where you became maybe aware of your racial identity, or maybe not even then, but notice that people treated you differently?
Like, age ranges are hard for me, but I know that I was young, and as being like I grew up in Alabama, and so growing up down there, I was raised by my white grandmothers. My black side was kind of absent due to my dad. And so in that, like, when I got into the school and things like that, it was really hard being able to, like, understand the difference in, like, acceptance. Like, the white kids didn't really understand, like, why I was brown. And then the black kids didn't really understand, like, why I talked white, or, like, why I acted white, or why I did my hair white. And I was very confused. And I didn't really identify this until, like, I was in my late 20s. And, like, come to terms with it. But it was just interesting because it was almost like racism from both sides. You know what I mean? So trying to figure out, like, where you fit in and, like, how to navigate that was just very confusing as a child. And knowing that, like, I obviously looked different. You know what I mean? There weren't very many biracial children in the 90s in Alabama, especially, like, the early 90s. And so it was just uncomfortable for the most part.
So you mentioned talk white.
Yes.
Can you go into that a bit more?
I mean, I think I just enunciated my words and pronounced my words, you know, like, and certain, like, phrases or sayings or whatever the case would be that were, like, more white, you know, because I grew up, like, all my family was white that I was around. My grandmother, my aunts, my uncles. I had very little cousins, very few, because my mother only had one brother. So it was just a very small country family, and I was definitely raised very white in country. And so being able to try to find a place in the Black community and find my own identity, like, I didn't really find that until, like, I moved here. And it was I was able to get more comfortable with being in that skin and like being accepted by whoever at that point.
And by here, you mean in Portland.
Yeah. And still now being in Portland, like hindsight 2020, I'm like, there aren't many people here. There are not very many, but the ones that are here treated me like one of them. And that was very, very nice. It was very different. Just very exciting. I was young. I was like 21 when I moved here. And so it was like very eye-opening coming from home to here. Like never really knew what a city was. Like the nearest city was like 45 minutes away. Yeah. So it was very
I actually looked up the stats on that topic regarding you know, the black and white ratio among others. And Portland, come major cities, is the second whitest major city. Really? Yes, it is.
And now, like, especially like with the election and all that, like I'm not very political, but I do know a thing or two. And so like since that, like it's gotten really loud, like the difference and the lack of black people like just going like to the store, you know what I mean? Like how many people like myself do I see? It's like very few.
Right.
And, you know, when you do, like you obviously have to say, hey, like, hey, what's up? Like, what are you doing in these parts type thing. And so it was interesting. It felt like when I moved here, there were so many more black people. And I'm like, I don't know if something has like changed or maybe just I grew up. You know what I mean? I wasn't so young and small town, like naive anymore. But it feels different in the last couple of years, specifically the last like 4 to 5.
Really?
Yeah, specifically. Like it was really odd. Like just like a shift happened and it was just like, where did all of us go? You know? Or maybe I started being in different environments. I'm not really sure, you know? Because, like, I mean, poetry, as much as we like to think about it, it's not really saturated with the Black community, you know, which is why, like, I am very happy that most of the poets that come to my mic are like BIPOC and like most of the crowd is that way too. Like, it's just a very supportive space.
Can you explain BIPOC?
Like, just people of color in general, really, you know, like that's who predominantly signs up, like predominantly who supports. And I think that that's absolutely fabulous, you know, because there's this weird thing where people don't really want to support others, you know, and it's like support your people even if you don't really understand or believe in it, you know what I mean? Like obviously that takes hard work, so show up to your peeps. Yeah.
So moving back to your earlier experiences, did you have any moments in your childhood that made you more aware of your racial identity, and if so, how do you feel that they shaped you?
Okay, so this is such a girly thing, but so gosh, I had to have been like in the 4th or 5th grade, like I was very young. And so I saw this hairstyle that I really wanted to try, and it was like this short like look or whatever, and I was like, okay, yeah, that'll totally go with what I have going on. At that young of an age, I'm not really sure what I thought that was, but I went to the salon. My grandmother took me to the salon, and I had like told the hairdresser what I wanted to do, and my grandmother was like, it's not going to work. And I was like, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? She was like, you know, like your hair is very curly, so like naturally it's curly. She's like, so if you cut it, like it's going to be much shorter when that happens. And so I still didn't really fully understand what that meant, you know what I mean? Like I figured I could just like blow dry it out, you know, like the video that I saw, you know, on like MTV or something, and I could just go with it. And no, it was absolutely terrible. She said, okay, go for it. You know, like, you don't want to trust me. I know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to explain to you that, you know, like it's different. And she wasn't really going in, like we were obviously in the hair salon, so she wasn't like delving into like what that really meant. And she never really did. Maybe she should have, so I would understand, you know, like my hair is not like the white girl's hair, you know what I mean? Like it's very much coarse, it's very short, and it's going to shrink a lot when that happens, and that's very common in the Black culture, you know what I mean? Like shrinkage in the natural hair, which is a lot of times why people straighten their hair or like do the braids or whatever the case may be, because it's just difficult to navigate sometimes. And so yeah, I got my hair cut, and I surely realized I was definitely not who I thought I was. That was kind of tough for me.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I thought I could do it, you know? I thought that being raised like in a white culture, not having like that exposure to my Black side was very tough for me. And so I didn't really understand how that meant, how that hairstyle would honestly like shape my life. Because, you know, like when I go back to school, you know,
Right.
obviously there's ridicule, there's things that are very different, you know what I mean? And so that was just very tough as far as like young image for a child.
Like body image.
Yeah, and just
like that.
yeah, and trying to navigate, you know, like what is appropriate or what you can do or what you can't do. And so, you know, like it was from the white children specifically, there was a lot of ridicule after that. And that was very tough.
And so by what you can or can't do, you mean as a Black woman?
Yeah, absolutely. Like as a Black woman, you know what I mean? Like you can't go and chop your hair off and think that it's going to look like the white lady that you saw on TV, because that's what's in the media. That's what's exposed. That is what is expected, you know what I mean, through especially like during the 90s, you know what I mean? Like this is what beauty is. And so it was very interesting.
So you mentioned the conversation with family,
Yes.
with your community. Was race spoken about? I mean, you said that your
Not
family
really.
that you lived with was white,
Yeah.
right?
It was kind of just not, it was like an unspoken thing in the house. And so, which obviously leads to questions, that leads to children being unaware of what's really out there. You know what I mean? Like the hatred that's out there. It's like they kept us like, because they knew that we were biracial and that, you know, we were, in the eyes of the white people, we were Black children. You know what I mean? And so, which equals indifferent most of the time. And so they kept us like in this bubble to where like that didn't exist, you know? And then we go into the real world and we're like in for a rude awakening where it's like, well, what the hell is this?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was protection, but almost a hindrance at the same time. Because, you know, if you are stuck in this bubble where the bad things don't exist, you know, you're not exposed to it, you know what I mean? And so when you go into that and you experience it for the first time, it's like, I don't even really know how to take this, you know what I mean? Like I unfortunately see everybody as if we're just everybody, you know what I mean? But like it was very different in school, you know what I mean? Like having white friends or like, you know, wanting to, like when I did hang out with the Black kids, you know, like the white people are always like, oh, like, you know, like labeling it as like bad news or something like that. It's like, no, this is just culture. You know, like we're loud, not because we're angry, but because we're having a good time. Maybe you should try it. You know, like we're not really so much angry, but more so passionate, you know? And so it was just a lot of things that were misconstrued.
Cultural differences.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't really have to understand or even agree with what your culture is or anything like that, but you do need to respect it, you know what I mean, and not put people down for who they are, and especially when it's like a great place to be, you know, saying, like I said, when I got here, like I really found myself in that community and it was really nice.
At that age, when you were younger, did you feel that that white culture, that community was more accepting of Black culture, excuse me, and
like in comparison
to
the region I was
culture?
in, yeah, you know what I mean. And sometimes it was easy to fall into that, you know, as to like use it as a mask, you know, to like almost like protect myself, you know what I mean. And so as a young Black female in that era, like there was something that I was always hungry for. You know what I mean? Like I was immersed in the white culture. I was very familiar with it, but it was like I didn't feel like mine. You know what I mean? So here I am again with like an identity crisis growing up, you know, because I'm in this and it doesn't feel right. I don't feel like I'm at home. You know what I mean? I feel like something's missing. And so I didn't really, again, it took years of therapy to dive through that. You know, I feel like I'm still not even really done because it's just a lot to cover.
Identity.
Yeah.
It's a big topic.
It's a huge topic.
It is a big topic.
Yeah.
And on that topic, navigating society, you mentioned having to go into that real world outside of that bubble.
Yeah.
What are some experiences that you consider, most prominent that would come first to thought, where you experienced racism, prejudice?
Um, let's see. I feel like, and honestly, as terrible it is to say, like, I ignored a lot of it. You know what I mean? Like certain comments, like, oh, like, why, again, like back to the hair, because a lot of it comes from like how people look, you know what I mean? Like how people act and things like that, because the first thing you see is a color, you know what I mean? So therefore, like, everything is basically judged off of that. And so they, like, as far as the white kids go, it was just a lot of like poking fun, you know, like always like the butt of the joke, you know, like always included but not really included into what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like we can invite her, you know what I mean? Like it's like a place filler. It doesn't really feel like I belong there, like as if they wanted me there. And so when I danced in high school. And so there came a point where like they wanted us to look a certain way. They wanted us to be a certain way. Same way with my first job after high school too. It was like, you know, we had to model ourselves and like, I guess, water ourselves down to look the image of a white presence. So whenever it was like performance day, Friday night football games, you know what I mean? Like we all have to wear our hair a certain way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we have to do the slick back. We have to do a long ponytail. Well, obviously I don't have long hair. It's like shoulder length at this point. And, you know, like we are like comments are made like, you know, okay, well, we're going to suggest like this hairstyle and we're going to suggest you to go here and get this ponytail extension. It's like, I go to high school like games now because my partner coaches basketball. And so I see all the young black girls out there and their hair is out and it is lovely and it's big and it's not the same as the girl beside them. And so I just feel like trying to model a black woman into like a commercialized white one is not really okay. It's never okay. I get like uniformity, you know what I mean? Like, okay, we all have the same outfit on.
Right.
Like we're allowed to be individuals with our hair.
But it was more than that.
It was. It always is more than that. And so it's just a matter of like, you know, you're different. I was always the only black girl in the class most of the time, especially in the younger days, because I went to a very small school until I moved to like a bigger like 6A high school. And so just being on the dance team as well, you know what I mean? Like you're the only black girl on the team, you know, is you're treated a little bit different. You're expected to work a little bit hard, to smile a little bit harder. And again, I don't agree with that either. You know, I feel like if we're all on the same team, we should all have to work just as hard as the next person.
Right.
You know? And so that was like, I was never called like the N-word or anything like that. I will say that the people who I were around did love me. You know what I mean? And so I wasn't really exposed to that. But, you know, like in the matter of like, I can feel as a young child, like that I'm different and that things are maybe a little bit more scary than what I thought.
And that different feeling, like we discussed earlier, having to wear those social masks.
Right.
You know, having to conform to the majority, whether it be something like disability or race.
Right.
It is an exhaustive action to take when you are monitoring your behavior.
Absolutely.
All the time. And then going home and having to think about, you know, what you're going to do next.
Right.
What you're going to have to wear. Are people accepting me? Are people perceiving me the way that I want them to perceive me?
Right.
And then at the same time, having that internal conflict of wanting to be yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that the biggest thing that I noticed was in the town that I grew up in, I was usually, especially like in the area that I was in, you know, like the black people were kind of like literally on the other side of the tracks, what we called West End. That's where a majority of the black people lived. The ones who made it out were also masking as you know, they would go into like the military, you know what I mean? So now they're like almost like whitewashed at that point too, you know what I mean? They live outside the city limits. And so in the area that I was in, it felt like I was always the only Black person. Like in the social groups I was in the schools that I were in. And again, like things were very diverse back then, like early 2000, you know what I mean? There was things where that's whenever I was going into like grade school, I guess. Not even, because I was in like the second grade in like 2000. And so I just felt like I stood out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean? Like I was always susceptible to being treated differently. And it's not even, again, like I'm not, maybe it's not necessarily like being called names, but it's how like you look at me or how you know, kind of like I'm the last one to get to put my order in type thing. You know what I mean? Like everyone gets to go before me, you know, and it's like I'm almost like expected to be quiet and wait my turn. And yeah, I just couldn't imagine treating anyone that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? I did have friends who experienced something very different than I did, you know, a very harsh situations, especially growing up like in the ghetto. You know what I mean? There's like shootings over there. I wasn't exposed to that. You know what I mean? And so, but like had a best friend and we're still friends to this day. And he grew up, you know what I mean? Like his mother was on drugs and she like they lived in like the projects and that was very hard to hear that he was treated like that, you know what I mean? Because like why are you, especially like being a Black boy, you know what I mean, like white boys will jump you and like things like that, like in school. And it's like I can't wrap my mind around it as to why.
Do you think that had something to do with his gender, being male? Or
as
due
far
to
as
his
like
behavior? As far as the difference in experience?
I think that it was a product of his environment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we grew up in very different areas of town. We had very different upbringings. And so like it was almost like we were kind of like middle classish, you know what I mean? I think, which is what saved me. But still, like, just, you know, we would be at a gas station getting like candy, you know what I mean? We're like 15 at the time, and you know what I mean? And like someone will come by and like call him like the N-word, and I'm like, I don't understand that, you know what I mean? And at this point, you know what I mean? Like, girls are very mean. Girls are may not physically as like violent as men, but like they are absolutely ruthless with like the rumors that they start. You know what I mean? Like the things that they say about you, like in the dance locker room. You know what I mean? Like I was a little bit more developed than them, and so it was just not very nice things. You know what I mean? To where like I didn't see them saying that to the white girls. You know what I mean? I don't see you talking about the white girl's hair looking crazy and extremely oily. You know what I mean? But like my hair is oily. Well, yeah, it is. And I'm grateful for that. You know what I mean? But and then for it to be happening so young.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, obviously, you're learning this from somewhere. Racism is not something that you're born with. You know what I mean? It's something that you see. It's something that you mimic. And so it, you know, made you question. There were certain people's houses that my grandmother wouldn't let me go to, you know, because she knew how their daddies were. You know what I mean? Like it was, I remember specifically, like we were very young and she told us, you know what I mean? Like, be careful out there. You guys are young and you're pretty Black girls, and that's not always like people will take advantage of that. You know what I'm saying? Specifically like older white men. And I was like, you know, because there was like, and it reminded me of like a movie that I saw years later to where, yeah, the white boys ended up snatching up the little Black girl from the town and like ended up, you know, unfortunately raping her and killing her. And it's not some active like sexual desire as hatred. You know what I mean? And like they were so afraid of that happening to us. Like that was the one thing that was like very known. Like once we became of age, that was probably one of the first topics of race that she really brought up was like, you know, be careful. And I was like, whoa.
So do you feel like this masculine behavior was not only one of to fit into society, but also survival?
Right. Everything
Protection.
seems like about survival. And they did, because I was raised by both my great grandmother and my grandmother. And so they did a very good job at trying to protect us, but again, like once we're outside of the house, it doesn't really matter. And so they never really told us to mask ourselves,
Right.
They never were like, act white or do this or that, but it's more so of like, act accordingly. Well, what is accordingly? Accordingly equates white. What is accepted in society? White. How do you, like, don't go out there carrying on all that hooting and hollering, specifically what you'd say. And I didn't really understand what that meant then, like we're children, we're all the same. Of course, we're loud, the white kids are loud too, but they don't notice that. They notice when the black kids are loud because now we're rowdy and now we're aggressive and we're threats. And that was not something easy to process in my high school.
It's huge.
It's everywhere.
It's huge. And I can't imagine, walking out the door and having, that thought be instilled in the back of your mind,
right,
of being concerned with my well-being against a majority group.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
No. And it was, again, I think because of where I grew up, like I feel like maybe as a biracial girl in like South Central LA, maybe my experience would have been a little bit different, you know what I mean? But again, it's like when you have cats, you know what I mean? Like you can put the cat outside and it'll hunt and it'll be feral and it'll like go to its natural instincts. Or you can have a kitten and you can bring it inside and you can give it milk, you can like nurture it and like, kind of like confine it to these walls. And so when you put the two in the room, they're very different.
Right.
Like even the difference in my sister and I, you know what I mean? Like we are very different. Especially again, like that difference really started happening once I moved here because I was more exposed to my culture and to like how to carry myself as a Black woman. And so it's just very different between her and I. We were raised in the same house. You know what I mean? Like we both grew up with our white grandmothers. She went on to have a child with a white man. I went on to have a child with a Black man. You know what I mean? Like I hang out in predominantly Black circles. She has 0 Black friends, And so it's just, I guess, a difference in kittens, because I was like, I became very almost like feral, like hungry for my history, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't exposed to it. And again, I don't think that it was done purposely, or maybe it was, I don't know, growing up, especially my great grandmother, because she was like, gosh, she had to be like, she was almost retired when we like were born. So in the 90s, like she had to be like already pushing like 65, right? So like to then have these Black grandchildren brought home to you and you have to take care of them, I'm pretty sure that really didn't go over too well. You know what I mean? Because my mother rebelled, you know what I mean? She had a child with a Black man, very young age. She was like 18, I think. And so it was almost like we were like Satan's little children when we were brought home to her. Obviously, I hope that she grew to love us, but because she took care of us. But it's like, was that just by default?
Right.
Like, did you really understand and accept? Because she's really the one who had a like hand in raising us and like kind of like molding us into the white children, And again, I don't even really know if it was on purpose or that was just the only thing she knew. She's not here for me to ask her. I don't know.
Right.
And so, but I do wonder that, you know what I mean? Like, did you mold us and mask us because you wanted to protect us? I know my other grandmother did. Or did you do that because you were racist? I did hear that in the family when we were very young, and I'm like, well, what saves us from that racism?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
it would be perfectly natural to question if she holds those beliefs,
Yeah,
like,
she was probably.
Why does she know that what other white people may feel?
Or think about her, because she was very like got up at 6 a.m. before we even went to school, like lipstick curlers, like, so she was very into appearance. And so I spoke about how I had never really been called the N-word, but like she was the first person that I heard use that word in reference to someone else.
Really?
And my mother's boyfriend, she had very many growing up. And so, but it was like, I get what you're saying. Like, they're no good because they're no good, not because they're Black, is what I'm thinking as a child, right? Like, what does race really have to do with it? But I'm like, that's a hateful thing to say.
It is.
You know what I mean? Like, don't be bringing those around my house. And I'm like, what? I was like 7 or 8 when I heard it the first time, and I was just like so heartbroken because I was like, that's us, though.
Right.
Like, we are those
That's
people.
a part of you.
You know what I mean? And so that was also a lot to uncover in therapy. And so I think that had an impact of more so of like shying away from that, like watering yourself down. You know what I mean? Like, because maybe I was in fear of the racism from inside the home.
Right.
You know? And again, like not from my grandmother who is still alive and here today. Like she's amazing. She loves us regardless. But yeah, my great grandmother, that was a interesting thing. And I think that I kind of like built up this like blocking mechanism, and I call it like my box with the pink walls. You know what I mean? Like anything I don't really want to process or deal with or remember, like I place in that box. And so I think that there was like a lot of that put in there, you know, to where for so long, again, before I moved here, I was just like, this is just normal. You know what I mean? Like everything is okay. Like this is just how we roll, you know, like who cares? Or like if I would say certain things or like come to school with certain clothes on, like the white kids would be like, oh, like, are you trying to like be Black? Are you gonna act Black? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what does that even mean?
Right.
Like I am Cheyenne. I am biracial. Do I predominantly associate with my Black side? Yes, because it's more welcoming, it's more comfortable, it's more understanding. And of like all the things that are just natural to me. You know what I mean? Like just in parenting styles, you know, there's a very big difference in how Black people and white people parent, you know, again, like me and my sister, that's how I've been able to relate to it because it really is just like split down the middle. Exactly. And, you know, she parents very white, very passive, very do whatever you want. And it's like in my household, I don't play that, you know, and like my son is very respectful and understands that, you know what I mean? And so we went on a vacation. And so that was an interesting family time. It was so interesting because I was like, because again, like I moved here and I really found myself. I found my identity. So I felt like to them, I'm like a stranger. You know what I mean? Like, who is this Black girl coming up in here? Is how it feels. And even if they don't mean it like that, you know what I mean? Like just the lack of understanding is really prevalent.
You mentioned the term whitewash.
Yes.
Not everybody's going to know what that means. Can you explain it?
Yes.
Hello, I'm dedicated to delivering the best product possible, and your support helps make it happen. Here's how you can help. Become a patron on Patreon. Your contributions help cover essential costs like audio and video production software, streaming services, guest travel expenses, and even electricity to keep everything running. You can support via GoFundMe if you'd like to directly support upgrades. I've created a GoFundMe campaign. For example, contributions can help fund the purchase of 2 Sony Alpha EV1 cameras and lenses for better angles, including full face shots of my guests and myself. You can visit my website to speakonline.com and share articles and content. Also, if you're interested in becoming a contributor or collaborating, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out and let's explore how you can get involved. You can engage with the channel. Liking, sharing, subscribing, and leaving a comment all go a long way in helping this channel grow and reach more people. Your support means everything, and I'm excited to keep improving and bring you the best possible product. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.